What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. We took the live off Grid Live Encore because, let's face it, our coverage of these series really isn't live. I'm Ben Schneider, joined as always by Brandon Crosland. Brandon, how's it going tonight?
Going well, and I'm enjoying that explanation is becoming more and more a part of your. You should just do that forever. That's just the opening bit.
Well, we'll see how long it keeps up here. I know it's only been a few weeks, so if viewers have been away for a few weeks, I'm going to keep clarifying that at the start here, but we'll
kind of like a whose line is it anyway kind of thing, where you always say, and the points don't matter.
Yeah. I don't anticipate it will last the entire year, but just remind everybody, this is still the same show. We dropped one of our three words from a name here, but same series, same coverage you know and love, and same open segments of hot topics going on in the sport right now. We're going to open up with one of those here tonight. But first, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us. It's what allows us to continue to grow what we're trying to build here at Grid Network. It's what's going to allow me to be on site with Joe Samaniego at Portland in just a couple of weeks' time. Those plans are quickly coming together. I can't believe it's only, I guess, 2.5 weeks away here now. So thank you all so much. And if you like what you see tonight, you can consider joining them, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link also in the description box below. Or if you're watching us live here on YouTube, we now have super chats and super thanks enabled as well. And if you can't contribute financially, you can always follow us on social media. That also helps a tremendous amount as well. Subscribe and hit the bell icon here on YouTube so that you're notified every time we host a new show or upload a new video. Now, Brandon, we had some racing at Darlington this weekend. ARCA East was in your neck of the woods of the Nashville Fairgrounds, and INDY NXT was back at the IMS road course as well. But I think we have to start with some news that broke today, and I'm sure Kobe and Josh and Matt will go into more detail Wednesday on Grid Tonight. But I want to get your thoughts on the in-season tournament that was announced today, coinciding with the arrival of Prime Video and TNT Sports coming back into the sport next year for the 2025 media rights deal. What are your thoughts on the announcement that we got today? Do you love it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you indifferent? Where do you stand on the idea of an in-season tournament for NASCAR?
Well, it struck me as kind of odd at first, seeing the brackets and everything like that. The first thing I thought of was the NBA, because they just started doing that this season from last fall going into the season for the NBA, and then they made it look different with all the home courts. They made them look with the very bold colors at all the different places, and really just gimmick style, making it something in the middle of the season, at the beginning of the season, that a time when people normally wouldn't be as engaged as they are later on down the hall, getting them engaged early, and so therefore keeping your watch time up as much as you can throughout the year. Well, I guess NASCAR is seeing that, and they want to say, what's the part of the year where we have not the max amount of people watching or paying attention or engaging with us? And I guess they're looking at that summer slump, I guess, and thinking, okay, well, this is where we can add some spice and make a little mini playoffs before the actual playoffs. So I guess we're getting that now. It's going to be interesting, and I think in my mind, when I first saw about it, I thought, well, maybe this was something behind the scenes that Prime Video and Turner needed for this to happen. And if that's the case, then I'm all for it, because just like you've been, I wanted more than two national broadcasters taking on the schedule, and so we'd have a third party, or even now this time a fourth party that's going to be putting creative juices into the flow of. We know what we expect from a NASCAR broadcast, but what are some new things we can do to keep the ho-hum from Fox and NBC and being content of staying the same? Hopefully Amazon Prime will do that, and TNT will do that. And now they have something to play with, which, if that's what it took for them to hop on board, I say so be it. It'll be kind of like the no bull that Winston did, but it's kind of stripped of all its gimmicky as far as naming, right? It's just the in-season tournament. We're not going to try to trick you. This is what it is.
I apologize to everybody that is as passionate as I am on playoffs and stage racing, and was maybe expecting me to go off a little bit more about this, but I don't have the energy. And I feel like I should. I feel like I should be like, oh, this is just another pointless gimmick. It's so unnecessary. It brings us closer to stick and ball sports. You're just copying the NBA. Why are we doing this? Who asked for this? But I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe it's the first sign of acceptance on my part, right? I feel like the ship sailed 20 years ago. As much as I voice my displeasure with the playoff system and stage racing and everything, I feel like, especially now that they tried walking stages back a little bit on road courses last year and didn't even get through the entire season before they said, forget it, we're throwing the cautions back out.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah, I know that the chances of us taking those things away from the sport in the future are virtually zero. So if you want to do something to spice up the middle of the season, I guess, do I love this? No. Do I think it's necessary? Absolutely not. Would I prefer, like you mentioned, Brandon, the Noble Winston sort of deal, or the Winston Million, or something like Sprint Tribe with the Showdown in 2011? I certainly would prefer that. I think this is a little elaborate and unnecessary. I don't love a bracket style tournament in a sport as chaotic as auto racing, but we already have a bracket to determine our champions. I mean, you have people like it's like March Madness now. You can fill out your playoff grid with all 16 drivers
Exactly
at the start of the year.
want.
I mean, it's not as big a deal as like, we don't talk about bracket busting upsets in this sport the same way as we do in college basketball, but the format leaves it open to the point where you could fill out a bracket to determine your champion if you want to. So I mean, that we've had that in our sport now for a full decade, and I feel like, again, but Just Be Diecast, I think, really summed up my thoughts on this better than I even could. I was struggling to come up with a reason. I'm like, well, why? I got to try to explain to people why I'm not that upset about this, but he said, I like the in-season tournament better than the playoffs, and I don't think we need both. And I think that's where I am. If you want to do something that has, some sort of bracket knockout style action, this is the perfect time to do it. I think with new media partners coming in, put it in the middle of the season, give Turner and Prime something to hype up and talk about for their coverage, and let it be its own thing. And you point to the NBA example, Brandon. I think a lot of people were reminded of that today as well. I've been known to change my mind over time. I don't want to judge it too harshly, positively or negatively, until we actually see it in action. Because when the NBA announced it, I was like, okay, this seems kind of gimmicky, right? We don't really need this. The regular season still means a lot in terms of seeding and everything. I don't know if this is necessary. And I didn't like the courts. Let me be clear. I think the courts absolutely need to go. I mean, they were just the ugliest, eyesores that and just, makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. I was not a fan of those, but the actual tournament itself, I thought was actually pretty good. I thought we got some higher quality basketball because the games, meant a little bit more to, I think, the second and third string players. Cause there was the argument again, why does LeBron James need to be playing so hard for $500,000? Well, he doesn't, Anthony Davis doesn't, but the guys on two-way contracts with the Lakers G League team and floating back and forth between the main squad, like, $500,000 means a lot to them. That's going to double their salary. So they're playing their hearts out, so, and I think, guys on the Pacers who the Lakers beat in the final for the in-season tournament, I think it meant even more to them. So, I think that, again, I want to see it in action before I form an opinion too strongly one way or the other. But again, like I said, I don't have it in me right now to show a lot of frustration about this, as much as I feel like I should agree with, the people that are, upset and just think that this is just another gimmick and nothing more. I don't feel that way right now. And I don't think I'm going to feel that way until we get to 2025 and we get 5 very low quality races with, quadruple overtimes and people wrecking each other because they're worried about where they are in the bracket. I mean, I don't anticipate that to happen. If it does, I'll probably sour on the format. But until that happens, I'm kind of apathetic to it at this point. I don't have anything much more to say.
Yeah, I'm just going through like the inner workings of this huge bracket and like imagining like Michael McDowell versus Alex Bowman. Like, woo,
Yeah.
Wow, so compelling. But like, I mean, granted, if everything goes right for him, then Alex Bowman's probably going to win that, depending on where they're going in the summer part of the schedule. I don't know. There's just a lot of. It'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out and plays out, and then the way that Prime Video shows it on graphics, and everything that goes into that, and also Dale Earnhardt Jr. being a big part of this, the new deal with the TV, and um, you know, it may catch on, it may be a thing. Who knows?
Yeah, well, and his podcasting partner over at Dirty Mo Media, Denny Hamlin, I think taking a victory lap after this, because it was kind of it really builds off of his idea, right?
Yeah, he's winning $1 million bonus.
Yeah. And he might not need $1 million bonus in his paycheck. He might go win it next year, because that is the prize for whoever wins this is $1 million. And I get that, people were saying that just feeds into the idea that this is a gimmick, because, the All-Star race has kind of lost a lot of its luster even after we brought it back to North Wilkesboro. I think it doesn't excite people the same way that the, Winston Million did back in the day. $1 million certainly doesn't go as far as it used to, but I don't know. Like, even if you adjust for inflation, do you think if the winner got $2.5 million for this bracket challenge, do you think that, the prize fund would be, really the deciding factor in terms of if you like it or not? I feel like people are going to judge it more by the format and, how NASCAR decides to go about introducing it than they are however much prize money is at stake here. So, again, I want to see it in action before I form too strongly of an opinion on it either way. But that's just where I am. Less than 20. I mean, it hasn't even been 12 hours yet. We got this around noontime today on the East Coast, I think. I think I was on my lunch break when some people were texting me breaking the news. But yeah, I think it's far too early to judge a super strong opinion either way here.
Yeah, now that we start talking about it, it sort of kind of frustrates me, because like, why do we need? It's kind of like a crutch for the actual playoffs. Like, why do you think the middle of the season is boring? Because we're just slowly adding to the playoff grid come fall. But so, like, if that's not working, so we're adding the in-season tournament. Like,
yeah,
and also just right after the All-Star race too, we're also giving away $1 million. And oh yeah, we're going to give away another $1 million for this in-season tournament. Make the
I mean, and I don't disagree with that, and that's exactly my argument against the playoff system here. But I feel like the can of worms has been opened anyway. I mean, if they were announcing this in 2004, yeah, I'd probably be like, what are we doing here? This seems absolutely ridiculous. But it's 2024. We changed the name of our chase for the cup to the playoffs. We changed the name of our green white checkers to overtime. I'm still not convinced that we're not going to add a fourth stage everywhere. And Coca-Cola 600 is already like this. We're just going to rename stages quarters. We'll continue to stick and ballify this sport as much as we possibly can here. But I don't know. It almost feels like this was expected, right? You see the NBA's, trying it out, and it has some fans, saying that they enjoyed it and it was relatively popular, and it added some importance to the middle of the season. And, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? I mean, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, I think it's a trend, really, and I'm afraid the trend's going to wane, and then here we are, still with the in-season tournament, and NASCAR does not seem like one to back down from an idea. They're going to stick by it and keep it. And I don't see them removing it is the thing.
Unless that idea is taking the stage cautions away from the road courses, then they're going to
there you go
on that.
There's one of those.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. And again, I'm sure Grid Tonight will have much more on that in just a couple of days' time. But let's get into the race weekend, and let's start with the Truck Series. Not really a shocker that a Cup driver won. You see Ross Chastain up there. We'll talk about him in just a moment. But the big shocker on, what was it, not the opening lap, I think lap 2 or lap 3, Kyle Busch spinning out and hitting the inside wall, tried to get the truck repaired, came back out, had more trouble, took it to the garage. That was the end of his day. And for the first time ever, Brock Beard had to write a Kyle Busch article for a Truck Series race. His first ever last place finish in the Craftsman Truck Series. He, I think, is now the 44th driver to achieve the last car Triple Crown with at least one last place finish in all 3 series there. And this was his 5th and final start of the year, I believe, as well. So, Brandon, I'll just pose a question to you here. We don't usually see Kyle Busch enter one of these truck races and not only fail to win the race, but drop all the way down to last place here. This is the first for him. And you can't say that too often about Kyle in this series here. How shocking was it to see him make a mistake like that and fall out of the race that early?
I'll have to say that was incredible because like his last the last truck his first truck race at Darlington, his last truck race of the season, and he finishes dead last. And Brock has to write an article about him. That's pretty cool. But like um it was coming out of turn 4 in lap 2, and there was a little bump there between him and Corey Heim on the outside. And I just have to say, like, I've seen people do that before, and I've done that myself also in iRacing out of turn 4, not because of that bump, but just because of that small radius coming out of the egg shape there of Darlington out of 4 being on the inside like that. That seems to be a pressure point, at least in the sim anyway, of having that steer where you go into the inside wall. So it was kind of weird to see that play out in real life, but I think this one probably had a mixture of that and also some sort of bump there in the surface. But yeah, absolutely not in Kyle Busch's character, especially in the Truck Series where he's so dominant. But yeah, that was the way to end it, wasn't it? Lap 2.
Yeah, what a way to go out, right? For Kyle, and picking up a couple of wins this year. Of course, it's been a little bit of a year of transition for him in this series, not running his own team anymore. I was going to say not running his own equipment, but let's be honest, a lot of it is the equipment that Spire purchased from KBM last year in the offseason. But yeah, I mean, certainly, there's not too much more to say here other than, a two-time Cup champion made a very uncharacteristic mistake and ended up costing him. And that's going to be it for him in this series this year. And it opened the door for an opportunity for some other drivers. Unfortunately, some of them got caught up in accidents of their own. You see Matt Crafton, Raja Caruth, Dean Thompson, Corey Heim down there, names that you would normally expect to see certainly several more positions up towards the front, battling for top 5s and even wins. But the driver that won the race, again, I guess probably not much of a surprise either, Ross Chastain. Now, he's doing this for Nice Motorsports, of course, who he raced for a championship with in this series 5 years ago. But Brandon, I think a constant criticism that we hear in response to the people that don't like Kyle Busch and Cup drivers running the series is the idea that you only don't like it when it's Kyle Busch. If Chase Elliott does it or if a Ross Chastain does it, they're full-time Cup drivers too. And we don't hear as loud of a voice in opposition to that. In your opinion, seeing Ross Chastain, and he, admittedly was pretty emotional getting this win at Darlington. It's a historic track. He had a win arguably taken away from him here in the Xfinity Series when he was running that Ganassi car. But is this win in your mind as bothersome to you as Kyle Busch's have been, not just this season, but the last several seasons?
I get kind of subjective whenever I see a guy like Ross Chastain scream as loud as he did to win at Darlington. See how much that means to him? That I'm sorry, that puts him in a different category for me than Kyle Busch, who would get out of the car and just go, "Yeah, truck was great. It's fun. I'll have to do it again sometime." That's how he would get out. It would not be like screaming on comms. But Ross Chastain, yeah, like you said, he had that win taken away from him, and here he comes with Nice Motorsports, and a guy that's had plenty of success already in the Cup Series, and is a relatively short time there, especially with Trackhouse, to be able to come down and get a win and be that excited. I can't help but say, yeah, it's pretty different than if someone like Kyle Busch or one of these other Cup vets would go down there and win.
I'm all for consistency, and Ross Chastain's a guy that, 2 years ago now made the championship 4 in the Cup Series. So I feel like he's at that point now where he probably doesn't need to be running these races. I do see what you're saying about it being a little bit different. This isn't the all-time series leader, but it's been doing this, longer than Ross Chastain's been racing in NASCAR, of course. But, again, I wish that he could do this in a Cup car. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, the emotions of winning at Darlington, I get that it's a big deal regardless, but, I still feel like, again, I try to be consistent on this issue. I don't care who it is. Even John Hunter Nemechek being in the Xfinity races, still bothers me a little bit. And again, I understand that his situation is much more different than, what you have with Kyle Busch or even with Ross Chastain here, but it's just the principle of a full-time Cup Series driver running one of these two series, taking wins and or points away from, a guy like Nick Sanchez or a guy like Ben Rhodes, who just made that crew chief change, is trying to get his season turned around again. It's something that, impacts the outcome of the season, because those are, playoff points and race wins that are going to waste here for the championship. So, it doesn't matter who the Cup driver is, or even the Xfinity driver, I guess. I wish that, it would be Cup or Xfinity / trucks, because of the situation that Ross found himself in 2019. Him having to basically start over after he declared for Xfinity to start the year, I thought, was pretty unnecessary as well. But, again, I struggle to reconcile that, because I get what you're saying about it, being a big deal to Ross and meaning more to him than it would for Kyle Busch. But I can't get over the fact that it is still a full-time Cup Series driver going into this series and taking a win away from the series regular.
Yeah, I do share that every time. Almost every time I see a Cup winner in Xfinity or trucks. But I'm not saying that Ross is struggling in the Cup Series, but when you see him do so well, let's see a driver do so well in the lower series, and they are not, top of the top in the Cup. It kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, do you need to be down? Is this where you belong? Like, but it varies from track to track, week to week. So you can't. That's not really a fair assessment of a driver, because where they go is pretty ever changing from week to week anyway.
Yeah, and again, we've had this discussion a number of times on this show, and I certainly understand both sides of it, and I get people are saying, it's not an exact science or the exact same situation here as it is with Kyle Busch. I'm just trying to be consistent, because I like to try to stay consistent on this show one way or another, and not let any personal biases get in the way, when we're talking about certain drivers here. And, I say I'm against Cup drivers running this series, and, I'm going to maintain that, even, if it's Ross Chastain getting an emotional win for Nice, just as much as it is, Kyle Busch getting, his umpteenth win for Spire, for his own equipment, or whatever the case may be.
Just whatever you do, don't be like me and be consistently inconsistent, because then we'll catch you for it.
Well, you're not as bad as the actual sanctioning body itself, right? I mean, that's the joke that we throw out there all the time with NASCAR, right? Consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. And congratulations again to Ross Chastain. As much as I'm not a fan of the practice, I know that win certainly means a lot to him, and you could see it in the emotions in his post-race interview as well. So congrats to him. We move on now to the Xfinity Series, and Justin Allgaier finally picking up that win. I think a much-needed shot in the arm for him and Junior Motorsports, running very strong. I think something that they needed just as badly as Ford was needing a win in any of these series, and we'll get to Ford here in just a moment. But, Brandon, I think we had this discussion last year or a couple of years ago. The Hall of Fame nominations are out. We're going to be going through that process again here soon. And, I've always thought that there's not quite enough representation between the Hall of Fame and some Xfinity regulars and Truck Series regulars. And you look at Justin Allgaier's win total in the Xfinity Series, he moves into a tie for 10th all-time with Tommy Houston and his boss, Dale Earnhardt Jr., with 24 wins in Xfinity. So I'll throw a hypothetical out to you here. Let's say he wins 2 or 3 more races this year and picks up a series championship. In your mind, if he retires at the end of 24, having done that, and I don't anticipate that that'll be the case, I think he'll continue to add to it for at least a few more years, but would that be enough, based on his Xfinity stats alone, for you to give him Hall of Fame consideration?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, come on, 10th all time for the Xfinity Series. I think there's some Hall of Fame nominees that have had less wins in the Xfinity Series, for sure. But yeah, he definitely deserves some sort of spot there in the Hall of Fame conversations, at least. And I guess a championship would be what he would need to actually solidify that talk and put him in the nominations. But like you said, this is probably not going to be his last year. He's going to have a few more years to keep adding to this. Maybe a championship would help that a lot.
So let me just go down the list here of the all-time Xfinity Series wins list, and the leaders ahead of Allgaier on this list. Kyle Busch, 102 wins. We know that he's a lock, right? 2-time Cup champion, all-time wins leader in Xfinity and trucks. He's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. Mark Martin in the Hall of Fame, second with 49. Kevin Harvick's third with 47. Cup champion, he's a lock. Xfinity champion as well. Brad Keselowski fourth with 39 wins. Again, I think you look at Brad's career, an Xfinity championship, 39 wins. If that's all anybody ever did, I think that's good enough for the Hall of Fame. And then you add in the fact that Brad has a Cup championship and 30 plus wins as well, adding to that this weekend in the Cup Series, finally getting a win as an owner driver. He's a lock. Carl Edwards is fifth, right behind him with 38. Carl, I think, has been a little bit overdue. I don't know if he's going to get in this year because I think there's a lot of drivers on that modern era ballot that, are maybe overdue. Neil Bonnett, comes to mind, and Greg Biffle joins the ballot this year. We'll see how much consideration he gets, but I think if Carl doesn't get in this year, I think his time is coming within the next couple of years. I don't think there's too much debate as to whether or not he belongs. It's just a matter of the competition on the ballot being right for him to be one of those two names that stands out the most for him to go in. But I think his day will come eventually. Jack Ingram is sixth with 31. He's already in. Joey Logano seventh with 30. He's a Cup champion now, 2 times over. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame one day. Matt Kenseth eighth, 29 wins. He's already in. Jeff Burton ninth with 27. He's one of those drivers that's on the modern era ballot. I think somebody who's maybe a little bit more borderline in the minds of a lot of people, but the fact that he's on the ballot shows that he's being given consideration already. And then you get to Allgaier. And like I said, level with his boss, Dale Jr., who is already in. Now, granted, Jr. has a lot of Cup success and ownership and media roles that I think play a factor in that as well. So I'm not saying his case is as strong as Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s here. But then I look at, Tommy Houston, who's also tied with him. Never won an Xfinity championship, came close a couple of times. But, again, I think is somebody that, has never really come up in that conversation. But, maybe you look at his career and what he accomplished in this series, having a lot of success, maybe we should give him a look. I'm not saying that he, deserves to go in unequivocally, that it's not even a debate. I think there would be a conversation about it one way or another. I'm sure some people would say, he didn't quite accomplish enough. But I feel like right now, Allgaier's he's closer to Tommy Houston's case than he is to Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s. But if he adds to that wins total, just even 3, 4, 5 more wins, there's really nobody above him on that wins list that I would say, isn't already in the Hall of Fame or isn't a lock to go in the Hall of Fame one day. So you look at his body of work in this series, how long he's been in it, and the fact that he is still continuing to compete at this high level. I think, honestly, if he gets a championship, he's got to be considered at least a lock to go on the ballot if all things go according to plan. What I would like to see for the ballot, giving some more of these truck drivers and Xfinity drivers some recognition. Jack Sprague also is on the ballot finally this year. I think that's been long overdue. Why not Justin Allgaier? If he can just add a little bit more to his resume, I think he would be right there.
Yeah, that research does help my decision out a ton. So championship would be a for sure lock. If he wins a few more, that also would be like more of a soft lock. Like, hey, come on, he's up there. He's past Dale Jr. now in Xfinity wins. We've got to give this some more consideration, even if he doesn't get a championship.
And the next driver right below him is, I guess, tied with Tommy Ellis for 13th. It's Sam Ard with 22 wins. Now, Sam's case is a little bit different because he, got all those wins in just a couple of years and then had a career-ending injury, unfortunately. But again, I was very vocal about that when the list of nominees came out. I was not happy that Sam Ard was taken off of the Pioneer ballot along with AJ Foyt, but I don't think that's indicator that all hope is lost for Sam Ard, because a couple of years ago Kirk Shelmerdine was taken off the ballot and then he was brought back on it and then eventually voted in. So it's not a situation where all hope is lost for Ard, I think. But I think, again, he's a driver that you look at his numbers and stats, and what he meant to the beginning of this series here. I think you have to put him in eventually. So, again, that would be another name that, Allgaier is just above now. And then you're surrounded by these Hall of Famers on this list. He might not be somebody that, comes to the front of your mind when you think future Hall of Famers in this sport. But I think when you look at the numbers, I would like to see him given some more consideration. I'd like to see him put in that conversation for sure. All right. Well, like we said, massive shot in the arm for Allgaier and Junior Motorsports. But Brandon, let's talk about Ford a little bit. You see Cole Custer up there in third place. He had a strong run, of course, for defending champion, still looking for that first win this year. But Brad Keselowski got that win this weekend in the Cup Series, and that's the first win for this season here in 24, not just for 4 teams in Cup, but also Xfinity and Trucks. So on that note, do you think that what Brad did on Sunday, is that going to energize the Cole Custers of the world here, even in the Xfinity Series and some of the drivers in the Truck Series as well, that, hey, we finally got that weight off our shoulders, the manufacturer has a win. Maybe that's something that can take the pressure off a little bit and get them to victory lane themselves.
Yeah, Ford finally did it. They basically finally did it last weekend, like we talked about with Kansas and Chris Buescher, his teammate. But yes, now finally in the books did it with Brad Keselowski and snapped his streak, and he's now an owner driver winner, thank goodness. And Ford finally can go, we did it. So we beat the who was it? Jackaroot, who said, wait, if it's going past the Coke 600, then we're threat level midnight. But we it's before that, so we're good. So good for them. But my opinion on this, of it like affecting Xfinity and Trucks, it goes to an observation I guess I've been making over the past few years. I think it's something that's kind of been going on since, that's something that hasn't happened since when the cars looked more like the street cars, like 70s, 80s, whenever they started compacting it around 82 or so, until about maybe 2016 with the Gen 6, or 2013 with the Gen 6 into now. I don't know if you agree with this or not, Ben, but I feel like we're kind of in a renaissance era where manufacturers like Ford Performance, Toyota, they bond more as a team globally now than they have, especially like in the 90s and 2000s. Like, it didn't really feel like they were that aligned as a manufacturer, as at least in marketing, and also in the way they talk, especially compared to now. I mean, a lot of these drivers, they just say, yeah, I am a Toyota driver. I'm Toyota, or I'm Ford Performance did a great job today. Maybe that's just my own observation being faulty, but I feel like we're kind of in a renaissance where manufacturer alignments are a lot more in the forefront than they used to be.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that proof of that is anytime a driver maybe making his Xfinity debut who runs in the Truck Series, or somebody that's filling in or whatever the case may be, like Corey Heim, for example. Corey Heim is a Toyota reserve driver. He's Legacy's reserve driver. I feel like back in the day, it wouldn't necessarily be so unlikely if a Chevy team was in a bind and needed to call up a truck driver. Maybe Corey Heim would be an option for them. But now I think I get what you're saying in terms of there being a lot more close knit kind of tightness between manufacturers, even among different organizations in this sport. I'm thinking back to the first year I watched full time was 2007. I think Mark Martin had just left Roush, which was a Ford team, to go to Ginn, which was running Chevrolets in Cup, but he still I think ran a truck race for the Wood Brothers, which was a Ford team. And maybe Mark Martin's not the best example, because if anybody can get away with that, it's probably somebody who's accomplished a lot like Mark has. But again, I feel like you're a lot less likely to see that now. The only one that kind of sticks out to me is when Ryan Newman got hurt at Daytona in 2020. Ross Chastain was called on to fill in for him, even though he was a Chevy driver, and that 6 car is obviously a Ford entry in Cup. But again, it's such an extreme circumstance like that, I think maybe a little bit more leeway given for such an example right there. But yeah, I can't speak to the 90s and 2000s because I wasn't really around during the 90s and 2000s. I can only pick up with what other people are potentially saying there. But I think that, yeah, there is certainly something to that. And I think that, you look at Chevrolet and Ford Performance and TRD and in NASCAR today, I think that there is something to be said for that, no doubt.
I just feel like there's like more, manufacturer training facilities, that sort of stuff, and like loyalty, as if like, we were talking about Corey Heim, like you can only go to these places, or you can only fill in these places. It just feels a lot more structured than it used to be, and it may have never been as structured as it is now. But I also may just be full of baloney and just kind of seeing a few things and drawing a conclusion. But it feels like. But back to the original question, yes, I think this is going to help Cole Custer and everyone else in the Ford camp just because of how aligned they are as a manufacturer these days, in my opinion.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll move on to the ARCA Menards Series East, back in action of Nashville Fairgrounds. And again, not a huge surprise here. William Sawalich in that Joe Gibbs Racing number 18 car. Absolutely dominant, led 145 of the 150 laps. Pole sitter Gio Ruggiero, you see him down there in 14th place. He spun out early, tried to get back on track. Unfortunately, ended up having to retire the car down there in 14th place, so not a great result for him. Isabella Robusto, though, a great result for the other Venturini car here. Hard-fought battle with Connor Zilic all night and coming out on top to finish second in what's technically her East debut. I know she ran the ARCA and ARCA West combo race at Phoenix, but a very strong result for her. As for Zachary Tinkle as well, finishing in P4 for the fast track team. So a career best for him over there. So Brandon, we talked to Jonathan about this a little bit last week as well. I've got to be honest here. It is kind of as much of a buzzkill for me, no disrespect to Sawalich, but just as much of a buzzkill as seeing these Cup drivers, take these wins in Xfinity and trucks. You almost expect it now out of this 18 car, because it's the only team in this series that has the budget and the resources of a Cup program, because it is a Cup team with Joe Gibbs. Do you feel like that gives this car, no matter who's in it, whether it's Sawalich or Tanner Gray or Ty Gibbs, obviously for all those years a few years ago, does this car, do you think, have an unfair advantage over the rest of the field given its affiliation with a Cup program?
Yeah, it certainly makes that 18 like 500 pounds lighter everywhere it goes, because I mean, listen, you're Joe Gibbs Racing and you've got an ARCA East car out at Nashville Fairgrounds. We had, like you said, we had a really awesome battle with Isabella Robusto and Connor Zilic. They put on a great show there in the closing laps, and Isabella took the inside and didn't give it back up. That was some impressive driving and for Venturini in that Yahoo 55. And if that was our battle for the lead, imagine what kind of show we would have had for Nashville. But unfortunately, it's that hard racing we see so often in P2, or battle for second, and then meanwhile, a mile down the road is Joe Gibbs just putting it on cruise control and taking another win. Like, I don't see why that partnership down in ARCA besides money, of course, is allowed to continue. Whenever you can obviously see with your eyes, like, this is not a rare result. We get this quite often in ARCA.
I want to be careful not to be too hypocritical here, because we talk about car counts all the time, and it is an extra car in the field. It is a development driver getting an opportunity with Sawalich here. But, it is kind of like, well, what did you expect to happen? He's a talented young driver, highly rated prospect, and unequivocally the best car in the field. He should be winning these races, and Tanner Gray even said it last week at Kansas. You get in this car, second is not good enough. Second is great for Isabella Robusto. Second, would be a phenomenal result for a guy like Zachary Tinkle, who still had a great result in fourth place, his first ever top 5 in this series. Almost every name on this list, they would love to be finishing second in these races here. But, when you're driving that car, the expectation is to win. And, it's almost a bigger story when that car doesn't win than when it, ends up in victory lane like we saw this weekend here. So, again, I don't know if there's a solution to it. I don't want to, put my foot down to the point where we ban this car from the series or anything, because I don't think that's the right solution. But I do wish sometimes that, the field were a little bit closer together, and, it wasn't just, the 18 and 20 series like we frequently see here.
Yeah, unfortunately, it just doesn't put on the best of show to have a rocket ship out front. But, like, what are you gonna do? Ban them from competition? I mean, they're already there. They provide a lot of money for that sanctioning body, and it is a development driver, like you said. Like, they have a right to be there. I just wish they were, I don't want to say spec, but
Yeah.
what would help the ARCA East and ARCA West races?
Yeah. Well, and again, in complete fairness, even if it was, Sawalich might still win anyway, because I think he's shown a
I'd
lot
much
of
rather,
even,
I'd much rather him win out of sheer talent than
yeah.
sheer talent. I know, yes, he also has a rocket ship.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, if Toyota put him in a Venturini car the same way, I think that he'd still be a contender up there. I don't know that he'd be as far down the road or be as expected to stomp the field like this, but again, like Robusto versus Zilic, imagine if that had been for the win. And the storylines you have here, Connor Zilic being a very highly rated prospect in his own right, winning these races already and what he's doing over in sports car racing. And the fact that he got beaten by a driver, who had to take much of the year off last year with a concussion injury and has just come back. It's only her second start in the ARCA platform. If this had been the win, I mean, can you imagine the storylines that would be created out of that? But unfortunately, it's for second place because, as everybody expected, that 18's too far down the road, and it's just another win for Sawalich.
It's a typical story. We see it all the time.
Yeah. All right. And finally tonight, we have one more race to recap. The INDY NXT Series back with a doubleheader at the IMS road course. Jacob Abel picked up another win ahead of Nolan Siegel. Not much of a surprise there. Those two, I think, pulling away as the championship favorites at this point. It's Abel's second win to Siegel's one that he picked up at the season opener at St. Pete. But Jamie Chadwick, a great result for her on the podium, the first female driver to pick up a podium finish in this series since Pippa Mann in 2010. So it has been a long time since we've seen that. We'll have much more on that on the Women in Motorsports show later this week. Unfortunately, not a great result for her in race 2, down in 16th place. But Louis Foster, the first driver outside of Abel and Siegel to take a win this year. You see Abel still a very strong result in second, helping pad his championship lead. Siegel still very much in the fight with another top 5 finish. But congratulations to Louis Foster as well for picking up the win in the second race. INDY NXT will be back at Detroit. They should be back on the IMS Oval for the Freedom 100, but alas, that race has not been saved just yet, so we're going to have to wait until Detroit to see them back in action, and when they are, we will cover it all right here on the Encore show, as we always do. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up the show here tonight, but before we do, as always, Brandon, what is your one shining moment from this weekend in motorsports?
I've got a couple, and one of them is not in the script, so it's a surprise to you, but the first one is for Nashville area native Hunter Wright, who got to make his second ARCA start for the ARCA East race at his home track there at the Music City 150 and finished in the top 10. Hunter Wright there, his second race with ARCA Menards East. His first one was his debut this year at Pensacola at Five Flags. Both of these, he did not know going into 2024 that he was going to be making some ARCA Menards East starts. So congratulations to them. Been known Hunter and his family since 2019 or so, whenever I met him at Veterans Motorplex in Ridgetop. But he's, of course, been all over the late model scene, super late model scene. That's his home track and does a lot of late model racing all over the Southeast, but that's cool to see him get into the ARCA Menards Series. And then also I had to brag on my favorite Cup throwback for this weekend at Darlington, and that goes for, I mean, it just pops so well. The Kyle Larson, Terry Labonte throwback was my absolute favorite across all three. I don't know how you could say anything else. And not only that, it also matches up with the 1998 version of the scheme, and they got some of the same original crew members from 1998 to be a part of that car, and also in a picture form as well. And I thought that was really cool.
I know you said after the show last week that you wish you had known about SVG's Marcus Ambrose throwback as well.
That too.
That was another one that I think was very well done. But I think best in show for sure. I mean, the only one that I thought rivaled it a little bit was Brad Keselowski's, and I'm glad that car got to be on that stage in Victory Lane. But again, you look at Larson's. I don't know how there's any debate. I think that the fact that the number and everything matched up, they got the right font with HendrickCars.com. Terry Labonte had so much fun with it as well, being a part of those festivities.
Yeah.
That's how you do a throwback, and I think very well done on that team's part, and certainly understand why that was one of the more popular ones that we saw this weekend. All the Hendrick cars, to be honest with you, I thought did a nice job. Even Chase Elliott, I know there's only so much you can do when you don't have the matching sponsor and the matching number, but I thought for what they were trying to do, they resembled the scheme about as well as they could be asked to. And then Byron and Bowman's as well, honoring Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, who drove those cars, excuse me, or those numbers for so long. I think, doing them a very solid job with their throwback schemes as well. I want to give a call to a driver that has not had a lot of success over the last couple of years, but has persevered throughout it all and is back in Truck Series this season trying to, rebound a little bit. Ty Dillon, his first top 10 in any NASCAR National Series in a long time here. And again, I know that even for Rackley Ward, that team would like to be running a little bit better than ninth place, but I think you have to, take your victories where you can get them and slowly continue to build back up to that where you want to be running eventually. It's got to be a shot in the arm for that team and for a driver that has been through a lot over the last couple of years, hasn't had too much success. I want to give a call to Ty Dillon and give him a job well done. Maybe this is something that they can build on over that 25 team, and we can see a little bit more of this and some more positive runs for Ty in the not too distant future here. So well done to Ty Dillon. That is my one shining moment for tonight. And that is our show. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube if you haven't already, and follow us on all our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and most importantly, right here on YouTube. Thank you all again so much for helping us hit the milestone of 1,000 subscribers. Here's to the next 1,000. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show to invest in our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2024. Our long-term goal of $500 per month will help us continue to expand our coverage by attending races on site on a more regular basis. And that only helps us get more coverage and content out there for you, the viewers. So thank you to those wonderful 6 individuals. We couldn't do it without you. You can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel now as well. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below, or donate through YouTube Super Chats as well. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now on Wednesday, Kobe Lambeth will be back with Josh and Matt for Grid Tonight. Women in Motorsports back this week as well with Joe Samiego, Isha Azim, Emily Sharp, and myself. So stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this weekend, as always, with pre-race wrap-up and then the Grid Encore show to follow here in 7 days' time. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for tonight?
Headed back to North Wilkesboro, the newly paved North Wilkesboro for the All-Star Weekend. Thank you, John Bender. He's glad there's more trucks entered this weekend. Also saw that he's a Ty Dillon fan, so he has the same sentiments there for you in your one shiny moment. But excited to go to North Wilkesboro again this weekend with the pave, see how that works, and also the trucks points paying race. Also going to be speaking with Alex Hayden from MRN this week. So wish me luck with that, and certainly no shortage of things to ask going into this weekend.
Yeah, very exciting weekend coming up. Best of luck with that interview. We'll be keeping an eye out for that. Are you going to post that to your YouTube channel?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, if you didn't know, Brandon has a channel as well, so make sure you subscribe over there. And
it's just for these interviews, really. Now that's kind of all. I spit them up there and go my merry way.
Yeah. Well, but our viewers should subscribe anyway so that they don't miss those interviews, because you do a very good job with everybody that comes on your station there. So we'll look forward to that, and look forward to the weekend upcoming as well. It's a busy time of year for this sport, but lots of exciting stuff coming up all around the country here, and especially in Indianapolis. And John, I'm with you. Hopefully keep your fingers crossed. I know the weather forecast doesn't look great, but we'll get the cars out eventually, and we'll have some storylines to talk about. Regardless, special Grid Tonight programming all this week. And thank you, John, as well. I almost forgot to mention that. You can stay tuned. We've been doing this for the last few years now. We'll be recapping Indy 500 practice every night this week on a special Grid Tonight shows. So Grid Tonight on Wednesday will be as normal, but you can stay tuned for some more shows sprinkled in throughout the week. Even if it's sprinkling on track, even if it's weather impacted, we'll have some updates and some top stories for you as we kick off the official start to the month of May here on the IMS Oval as well. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week right here on Grid Encore. Thank you all for watching.